Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grace, and this is the KMG show. It's 3 p.m. Pacific time and not 4 because I've moved it up an hour because of the second presidential debate, which will start in 2 hours. So I figured the people who watch my live stream would probably rather watch Trump versus Biden than that. So I moved it up. But let's talk about Joe Biden. Joe Biden says that America is an idea. Of course, he's not the first person to say this. The idea of America as a proposition nation is a popular one. Let's go to the New York Post. Joe Biden said that America was an idea that the country has never lived up to. The former vice president made the comments on Brené Brown's podcast on Wednesday during discussion about the legacy of slavery and the Black Lives Matter movement for racial justice. America was an idea, Biden said. We hold these truths to be self-evident. We never lived up to it, but we've never walked away from it before. And I just think we have to be more honest. Let our kids know as we raise them what actually did happen. Acknowledge our mistakes so we don't repeat them. He continued to say that it's important to teach students the facts. So I think it's important we teach history, not in a prescriptive way from my perspective, but what's actually the facts were, without also acknowledging that there's 400 years of racism in the United States of America. That's what it is, and it's able to be fixed. You wouldn't guess hearing this, that Joe Biden had been vice president of the United States for 8 years. And the president of the United States at that time was a man called Barack Obama, who is a black man. So that is to say, the dynamic duo of Obama and Biden had 8 years to really make a serious dent in America's racism problem. But apparently they didn't for some reason. And as we know, at the end of Obama's second term, race relations in the United States turned decidedly sour. Now, if America is an idea, why does it have to be America? Why couldn't America exist in, Guatemala, Paraguay, the Congo, Mongolia? Well, it couldn't, because obviously America is not an idea, just in the way that America is not, as some like to say, an experiment. America is it's a people in a location with a history. It is more than a set of propositions. I'm not the first person to say this. It's rather a cliche. But if one talks about founding documents, then the Soviet Union must have been a great place, because they had an outstanding constitution. Now, of course, it's hilarious that Joe Biden is presupposing that American students aren't taught about racism. Well, they hear very little else. From the 1960s, the 1970s, it's all been about Rosa Parks, who once got on a bus, and the Underground Railroad, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it would seem that 70 years of indoctrination has not really made much difference as far as racism goes. But we see that Biden he's a believer in America's original sin, that is slavery. And but who is the Jesus who is going to come to free us from original sin? I don't think it's Joe Biden. Trump campaign communications director Tim Murtaugh said Joe Biden's closing argument is that America has always been a disappointment. Where have you been for 47 years? That's how long he's been in public office. America is the greatest nation in the world. We stand for freedom and opportunity for all. Our nation is filled with strong, innovative, and hard-working individuals who love this nation and don't want to fundamentally transform it senior advisor to the campaign, Mercedes Schlapp, said. Now, some things about history. We believe these truths to be self-evident. Well, it's simply a fact that in the West, Black people were not considered equal to white people. That's the way it was. It wasn't just in the United States. It was everywhere. Now, all of the deficiencies, legal deficiencies that Black people suffered, these were all ameliorated by the end of the 1960s with various civil rights acts. And even beyond that, since the 1970s, America's had affirmative action, which is to say that it is now legal to discriminate against, it's illegal to discriminate against anyone except white males. And it doesn't seem to have made much of a difference. I mean, it's possible, I know it's unthinkable, but theoretically possible, that perhaps the failure of Black people to come up to norms set by others, not just white people, but say Asians, might have something to do with what the sainted Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said was the content of their character. So what does Breitbart have to say about this? Biden included a link to a podcast interview. Oh, it's Brené Brown. Biden's words were a rehash of his stump speech with some important modifications. For 2 years, Biden has cited the Declaration of Independence on the campaign trail, arguing that while ours has never been a truly equal society, we have never given up trying to make it so. I don't know, what could he possibly mean by that? Because from the founding of the United States, and if you look at the first two naturalization acts, they make it clear that citizenship is open to white people only. And yes, there was a civil war from 1861 to 1865, but then there were the Jim Crow laws after that. Joe Biden is one of these people who believes that America began in the 1960s, that whatever happened before then is not really relevant. In his campaign launch video, for example, Biden said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. We've heard it so often, it's almost a cliche, but it's who we are. We haven't lived up to these ideals. Jefferson himself didn't, but we have never walked away from them." Yes, but Jefferson lived up to his ideals as he understood those ideals and as everyone at the time understood them. Biden has sometimes added men and women to the text of the Declaration and has occasionally forgotten it altogether. You know the thing. But what is new in Biden's tweet is his emphasis on America's mistakes, echoing his recent refrains about systemic racism, apparently an attempt to identify with the left-wing protests of the last several months. President Donald Trump has sought to draw a contrast with Biden on this point, adding a line to his recent speeches: "The Democrat Party is ashamed of America. The Republican Party is proud of America." And that's a big difference. Let's see what's going on in the chat here. Yes, I'm going to be talking about has-been Obama showing up in Philadelphia. William Hicks says, "Can't Biden start by acknowledging his mistakes, never mind everybody else, or the last 400 years? Jonathan Pohl says, "Mongolia is a real nation. The others he listed, not so much." Yo Mama, "The Republican experiment is an abject failure. How per America's idea, racism is a physical element." Yo Mama says, "America's original sin is republicanism." John S., I will be talking about the lurid accusations against Hunter Biden later. Jonathan Pohl says, "Up to 75,000 words on the book. I'm glad to hear it." Wandering Spurg says, "What's better than the KMG show? The KMG show on a big screen TV." Ooh. British American said all men meant white males. Yes, of course. Everyone knows that. But again, it's this Schrodinger's cat thing with the left. That, yes, times were wicked back then. Oh, no, but the ideals. America was formed by men who had certain ideals. And the fact that those ideals are not consonant with contemporary ideals is an enormous problem for the left. An enormous problem. Let's see, where are we going next? Okay, yep. Let's get into the lurid stuff. The very lurid stuff. This is from the Gateway Pundit, Cassandra Banks. Approximately 1/3 of the explicit photos of minors in Hunter Biden's laptop were of the same 14-year-old girl who is one of his relatives, according to a shocking new report. Not only were there inappropriate photos of the child on her own, but Hunter Biden was in some of them with her. A source close to the matter, though, who claims to have seen the images on Hunter's laptop, told Revolver that about 1/3 of the images are of the same underage girl. Some of the images are topless, while in others she is shown in suggestive positions with Hunter himself, Revolver News reports. I'm rather getting the impression that, well, they know who this girl is. I mean, you would have to know who the person was, how old that person was, before you could say that girl was underage. I suppose, unless she obviously showed no secondary sexual characteristics. The Gateway Pundit spoke to another source who said the same thing. Rudy Giuliani announced during an appearance on Newsmax on Tuesday evening that he had handed the hard drive over to the Delaware State Police over the images of minors. He also shared a text exchange between Hunter and what he believes to be his father. Quote, "She told my therapist that I was sexually inappropriate with redacted when she says that I FaceTime naked with her. And the reason I can't have her out to see me is because I'll walk around naked smoking crack and talking to girls on FaceTime." Hunter says in the exchange, when she was pressed, she said that redacted never said anything like that, but the bottom line is that I created and caused a very safe environment for the kids. Giuliani said that Biden, according to text sent to his sister-in-law on numerous occasions, FaceTimed a 14-year-old girl while naked and on crack cocaine. Yes, the Biden campaign is finished. This is someone called Press Reset Earth. Perhaps. What if you have an enormous sex scandal and the media doesn't pay any attention? Because that's what seems to be happening now. The FBI has reportedly had the contents of the hard drive since 2019, but has not acted on them. Now, this to me is one of the most puzzling aspects of this. The FBI has not acted on them. Why would that be? Because it takes them forever to put together any kind of case, or they decided they were simply going to protect Hunter Biden? Because you've got to protect the son in order to protect the father. Here's another story from Breitbart, Matthew Boyle. Biden family insider Tony Bobulinski has provided a trove of documents to U.S. Senate investigators from the Senate Homeland Security and Senate Finance Committees. Bobulinski, the recipient of one of the emails retrieved from Hunter Biden's laptop, went public on Wednesday night with a statement saying he confirms its authenticity and detailed how former VP Joe Biden, the Democratic nominee for president in this year's election, which is 10 days away, was personally involved in many dealings with his son's business associates. These documents have begun appearing in public and have been obtained by a number of media outlets. In them, text messages, emails, and other documents illustrate a larger picture of concern regarding the Biden family's operating procedures and deep connections that Joe Biden himself has to all of this. Don't mention Joe being involved. It's only when you are face-to-face, Biden family associate James Gilliar, the head of J2CR, says in one WhatsApp text message that Bobulinski provided to the Senate committees. I know you know that, but they are paranoid. Other text messages reveal details about the negotiations between Chinese officials and the Biden family. In one 2017 text message, Hunter Biden himself says that a Chinese investor intended to become partners with him in order to be partners with the Bidens. Yes, Hunter Biden, DC, and Tony, that is what Zhang implied. They are both coming to be my partner, to be partners with the Bidens. He has implied that the number one has made that clear and available to him. Senate officials confirmed to Fox News and other outlets that Bobulinski is cooperating with them. Sean Davis of The Federalist tweeted, a source with direct knowledge says Bobulinski has provided all relevant Hunter Biden documents, including the conversations from Hunter himself about leveraging the family name in business deals with Communist China to congressional investigators. Bobulinski's statement and cooperation with Senate investigators seem to have blown the scandal wide open, as Senator Josh Hawley noted on Thursday morning that the Senate Judiciary Committee voted to subpoena Twitter and Facebook over the tech company's move to censor the original New York Post story that first revealed emails from Hunter Biden's laptop. And back to the New York Post, which, of course, as far as I know, is still suspended on Twitter because they won't remove emails about their blockbuster stories. This is from Ebony Bowden, and it's about Bobulinski. Again, the passages from these emails obtained by Fox purportedly show Bobulinski being instructed by James Gilliar, another key player in the alleged scheme, not to make any mention of the former Veep's involvement. In a lengthy statement to the Post, Michael Goodwin, Bobulinski addressed a May 13, 2017 email published last week that revealed how Hunter Biden pursued lucrative deals with a Chinese energy company and wanted to hold 10% of profits for, quote, the big guy, unquote. Bobulinski specifically confirmed that the big guy was Joe Biden. Hunter Biden called his dad the big guy or my chairman and frequently referenced asking him for his sign-off on advice on various potential deals that we were discussing, he said in the devastating statement. I've seen Vice President Biden saying he never talked to Hunter about his business. I've seen firsthand that that's not true because it wasn't just Hunter's business. They said they were putting the Biden family name and its legacy on the line, he went on. Yes, I mentioned yesterday that the Democrats may well be reduced to the old Eddie Edwards line. Was that 1991? Vote for the crook. It's important. Oh, this is not a story. Come on, everybody does it. Except, we said that Donald Trump did it, and that was impeachable. But come on, this is Joe Biden. Uncle Joe. I mean, he must have had good intentions. Michael Goodwin has a op-ed in the Post. Wait till Scranton hears about this. One of Joe Biden's ways of contrasting himself with Trump has been to declare the election a battle of Park Avenue values versus Scranton, Pennsylvania values. I've never really quite understood that, given that the Biden family left Scranton when he was, 10 years old? Something like that, and moved to Delaware. Now we learn that Biden has secretly been playing footsie with China. The statement Wednesday night asserting that the former Veep was a willing and eager participant in a family scheme to make millions of dollars by partnering with a shady Chinese communist firm is a singular event in a presidential race already overflowing with drama and intrigue. The claim alone, the big guy claim, rips out the heart of nearly everything Joe Biden has ever said about Hunter's many businesses and Joe's knowledge of them. His repeated insistence that the two never spoke of the son's global sources of money didn't pass the laugh test. After all, they traveled together to China on Air Force Two, where Hunter landed a $1.5 billion commitment from a government-controlled Chinese bank. Then there was Hunter's $83,000 a month gig on the board of a Ukrainian energy company, despite his lack of experience in the Ukraine or knowledge of energy. It was no coincidence that the Veep was Obama administration's point man in both countries. Wherever Joe went, Hunter went along, not to do good, but to do well, very well. There were similarly lucrative deals in Russia, Romania, and Kazakhstan that we know of. Now, because his role in the China deal has been credibly confirmed, it's beyond dispute that Joe didn't just know what was going on. At least in this case, Joe was a player and had his hand out. Yeah, we all know that Joe Biden said he had a don't ask, don't tell policy with his son, which I'll repeat because I think it's important, that this alone disqualifies him for being president of the United States. That if your son is a lobbyist, a corporate grifter who is known for activities in foreign countries, then if you were vice president of the United States and you had been designated point man in the Ukraine and China, you would really want to know whether your son, Hunter, had any involvement with the Ukraine or China. And if he did, well, you would tell him to stop. And if he didn't, you would tell him not to have any involvement with the Ukraine or China. There's plenty of other places in the world to grift. Michael Goodwin continues. In effect, Hunter and sometime Joe's brother Jim were turning the office of the vice president of the United States into a pot of gold for themselves. What is not clear yet is whether Joe Biden had secret stakes in any of Hunter's other deals. As for this one, while the date on the May 27 email would be nearly 4 months after Biden left the White House, it's not known when discussions among the partners and with the Chinese first began, certainly before they began the email. And while such deals would be legal for Joe Biden when he left government service, the facts take on extra significance during a campaign where China policy is a frequent topic and a big dispute between Trump and Biden. Yes, Biden has been trying to talk tough about China in the last few months, but we know his record. We know him talking up China for years and years and years and years and years. Let's see, Biden during the Democratic primary scoffed at the notion that the Asian power is a threat, saying China is going to eat our lunch. Come on, man. Well, they already have, haven't they? When Trump blocked flights from China during the early days of the coronavirus outbreak, Biden accused him of xenophobic fear-mongering and labeled the president a racist for calling the disease the Wuhan virus. Bobulinski, a former wrestler at Penn State University who spent 4 years in the Navy, insists he has voluminous evidence to back up his explosive charges, reportedly including documents, emails, messages, and other proofs. Late Wednesday, he uploaded many to a file-sharing service. He also said he turned over all the evidence to two Senate committees. Let's see. As he puts it, the Johnson report, that is from the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, connected some dots in a way that shocked me. It made me realize the Bidens had gone behind my back and gotten paid millions of dollars by the Chinese, even though they told me they hadn't and wouldn't do that to their partners. He blasts much of the media and big tech for shielding Biden from questions after the Post published the China email and one on Ukraine. Both were on a laptop computer Hunter left with a Delaware repairman and never retrieved. I can no longer allow my family's name to be associated or tied to Russian disinformation or implied lies and false narratives dominating the media right now, Bobulinski wrote. Yeah, we'll have some more about media ignoring this story from David Greenfield at Front Page. The Biden family is notorious for being the crookedest clan, not only in Delaware, but in D.C. Delaware is a pretty small place, but D.C. is even smaller. Yet the scope for corruption, unethical behavior, conflicts of interest, and even brazen thievery are far greater in Washington. And yet the Biden family stood out even there. To be born a Biden in the era after Joe switched his party affiliation, plagiarized his speeches, and inappropriately touched every woman or girl he could get his hands on in the state and the nation was to be bred into dirty money. Joe Biden was now asked in Wisconsin if Hunter had profited off the Biden name. None whatsoever, the godfather of Delaware retorted, and the entire state laughed. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican in Delaware. Everyone knows that the Biden name means money in the bank, literally. Just ask MBNA, Hunter's former employer, whose executives poured $200,000 into Joe's coffers, and one of whom bought his house. Don't worry about investors, James Biden, Joe's brother, famous for scoring a billion-dollar contract to build houses in Iraq, told executives at Paradigm Global Advisors. We've got people all over the world who want to invest in Joe Biden. James had bought Paradigm together with Hunter Biden. Biden can try to deny the obvious, but he isn't even trying to deny that the emails and photos are real or that it was his son's laptop. Instead, he spouted a word salad of gibberish, stating, quote, "The vast of the intelligence people have come out and said there's no basis at all," unquote. Why does Biden need to call on the vast of the intelligence people who carefully avoided making a firm statement to deny something he is better able to deny on his own? Because it's really an admission. The latest emails make it all too clear that Joe Biden got Viktor Shokin, the Ukrainian prosecutor, fired because Burisma wanted him gone, and that Hunter Biden's purpose in making deals with a powerful Chinese energy company linked to the communist regime was to produce income for, quote, "me and my family," unquote. It's no wonder that the latest reports link the FBI's subpoena of the laptop not to the media's false claims of a Russian op, but to a money laundering investigation. Investing in Joe Biden, or as one message allegedly has it, the big guy, meant depositing the money with James or Hunter, and then Hunter deposited a laptop with a small computer repair shop in Delaware 5 miles from his father's home and never picked it up. The rest is history, and the history is happening now. The Hunter Biden laptop unrolls two ragged threads. One is the descent of Joe Biden's son into new depths of depravity, and the other are the foreign investors who bought into Joe Biden Inc. The alleged photos of Hunter Biden's drug use and underage girls might be dismissed as a spoiled rich kid's demons, but looking at public photos and videos of Joe Biden touching, caressing, and sniffing women and young girls, it's hard not to see the influence. What did a teenage Hunter grow up seeing his father do? How did that shape him into the man he is? And why was Hunter able to get away with it for so long? Text messages exchanged between Joe and Hunter Biden, father and son, discussed sexually inappropriate behavior with a 14-year-old girl. Yes, and I read that quotation already. What was done about this? The odds are good that the answer is nothing. The Hunter Biden laptop was turned over to the FBI in December 2019, and the FBI appears to have done little with it. A spokesman for a Delaware Attorney General Kathy Jennings said it was sent to the FBI. This is the laptop that was, or the hard drive that was deposited with the Delaware Department of Justice. Jennings is not only a Democrat, but a friend of the Biden family who had worked under Beau Biden and has been vigorously campaigning for Joe Biden. I've known Joe, Jill, and the Biden family for most of my life. Joe is one of the kindest and most genuine people I've ever known, Jennings had posted on her Facebook page. Just to remind listeners, or perhaps this is new to you, this is not a rumor. This is incontrovertible that when Beau Biden, the late sainted son of Joe Biden, the good one, not the bad one, was Attorney General of Delaware, he arranged for house arrest for a member of the DuPont family who had raped his 3-year-old daughter. And during this house arrest, the DuPont fellow then sexually molested his son. Yeah, that's the good son. Beau Biden was responsible for this. The Biden family may be able to get away with a lot for the same reasons as the Kennedy clan. They were big fish in a small pond being protected by the Democrat club. Like some Kennedy sons, Hunter may have spun out of control because he could get away with it. Well, yeah, talk about Chappaquiddick and Teddy Kennedy. We all know the story of his cowardly behavior, where in pursuit of adultery, he managed to kill a young woman, and then he walked away from it and pretended as if nothing had happened. And under Massachusetts law, there was a mandatory jail sentence for what he did. But guess what? He didn't go to jail. Laptop computers, like notebooks, are the mirrors of their owners. We use them to fill them with the things that matter to us. Going through a lost laptop or phone tells us a lot about the man or woman who spent years with it. Hunter Biden's laptop is a mirror of the man, and the mirror shows a broken and corrupt human being filling his gigabytes with his demons. What were Hunter Biden's demons? The same as the ones that bedeviled Joe. women and money, and as dirty and wrong as possible. That's why Hunter allegedly didn't just seek out money. He went after business opportunities in the most corrupt places in the world, like Kazakhstan and the People's Republic of China, and he didn't just chase women. Instead, Rudy Giuliani has said that the laptop contained photos of underage girls. But the bigger story isn't Hunter's depravity, it's the business opportunities, the lobbying gigs, and board seats offered to him by foreign companies looking to invest in Joe Biden. In less than 2 weeks, Joe Biden's stock will either boom or bust, and voters are entitled to know who, beyond the battalions of domestic special interests from Wall Street to Hollywood, from the gun control lobby to green businesses pouring hundreds of millions into his campaign, is getting ready to collect interest on the foreign money that financed Hunter's lifestyle. Why did so many Democrat officials, beginning with Barack Obama, try to keep Joe Biden from running in 2016 and then 2020? Joe Biden is a mediocre hack, but he's a better candidate than Hillary Clinton, not to mention lefty luminaries like Al Gore or John Kerry. The problem was that the small state that spawned the Biden crime family was littered with their dirty laundry. And now, in the final stretch before Election Day, the messy, stained laundry is spilling out. NPR. This is from The Federalist, Jordan Davidson. National Public Radio announced Thursday it would not be covering the bombshell Hunter Biden story first reported in the New York Post. And what did they say? Why haven't you seen any stories from NPR about the New York Post Hunter Biden story? We don't want to waste your time on stories that are not really stories. And we don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' time on stories that are just pure distractions. This is from Terrence Samuels, NPR's managing editor for news. And NPR public editor Kelly McBride wrote Thursday, there are many, many red flags in that New York Post investigation. The newsletter cites an analysis article by one of their own media correspondents who claims that the emails the Post, Rudy Giuliani, who gave the laptop hard drive to the Post, all lack credibility. The analysis also cites the Biden campaign's claims that one of the alleged meetings orchestrated by Hunter between his father, the former vice president, and an advisor to the board of a Ukrainian company never appeared on the official schedule. I've mentioned this several times now, and they are trying our patience. To repeat, if you want to put together a dirty deal that involves money laundering, and you need to meet with some foreign potentate, you are not going to put that down on your official schedule. But you see the appeal to authority from the media. Oh, it wasn't on the official schedule, so it never happened. This is like a woman suspects her husband of having trysts in his office, and he produces the book or the computer file with all his meetings. Yes, you see that Jenna McFloozy was not my 3 o'clock that day, so it couldn't possibly have happened. Secret Service records this week, however, show that Biden did in fact meet with the Ukrainian. While the correspondent acknowledges that the New York Post story could someday be proven accurate or largely right, it also says that the article could be a far cry from investigative journalism, rather speculative partisan advocacy, a totem of our media moment. Oh, yeah. You mean like last year when CNN and a whole bunch of other respectable media organizations were speaking at great length about Donald Trump's penis? You remember that? Despite the fact that the intelligence community debunked claims that the Post story was part of a Russian disinformation campaign, McBride claimed that it was wary that the information presented in the article was somehow connected to Russia's attempts to interfere with the election. Intelligence officials warn that Russia has been working overtime to keep the story of Hunter Biden in the spotlight. That doesn't mean anything. That sentence literally doesn't mean anything. Even if Trump can't be positively connected to this, even if Russia can't be positively connected to this information. Oh, so even if what we're alleging is untrue, yeah, it doesn't matter, because the story of how Trump associates Steve Bannon and Rudy Giuliani came into a copy of this computer hard drive has not been verified and seems suspect. Despite NPR's coverage of the Russia hoax based on an entirely unverified Steele dossier, McBride also alleged that the Post's forensic vetting process was not proof enough for NPR to cover the story. Keep in mind that, I don't know, who listens to NPR? The kind of people who, it's always 1977 and Fleetwood Mac's Rumors, those people. Oh, let's talk about Barack Obama, superstar. If I were Barack Obama's publisher, I would not be very pleased with what happened in Philadelphia. This is from Andrea Whitberg at American Thinker. Barack Obama, How the Mighty Are Fallen. Once upon a time, Barack Obama had the world at his feet. Tens of thousands of adoring people would come to see him, and often women would react to him as teens once reacted to Frank Sinatra by fainting away in his presence. Now, though, not so much. Obama is stumping for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and the magic is gone. Nowadays, Obama is drawing crowds that number in only the tens and maybe the hundreds. Before Trump and his mega and MAGA rallies, there was Barack Obama circa 2008. Back then, he was a rock star. In June of that year, when Obama knew that he was going to be the Democrats' presidential candidate, he famously announced that his nomination, quote, was the moment when the rise of the oceans began to slow and our planet began to heal, unquote. How can people say something like that? How, without looking up and expecting a thunderbolt from God? At a Portland rally in July, approximately 75,000, that would be July 2008, 75,000 people came to see Obama. He got an even better reception that same July when around 200,000 people turned up in Berlin to hear Obama speak. And I'll mention it again. What the hell is a U.S. presidential candidate doing campaigning in Berlin? By October 18th, 2008, the St. Louis, Missouri police estimated that 100,000 people attended an Obama rally. No wonder Obama and his team began to take him very seriously. At the DNC in August 2008, Obama stood on a set with impressive Greek columns that were obviously intended to suggest the dawning of a new age. And then there was the fainting, so much fainting. In February 2008, when the Obama worship hadn't even peaked, James Taranto put together a list of fainting women at Obama rallies. They were fainting in California, Wisconsin, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Washington State. You'd think they were at a Beatles concert. Actually, this rather proves Marshall McLuhan's point about charisma. McLuhan said that charisma was being like a lot of other people. Now, Obama is a bland person. He's diffident. He's effeminate. He is certainly not very good at communicating. I mean, he's pretty good at reading a teleprompter, but he is not a commanding figure. And this explains the fainting, because he was just a Rosetta Stone, or sorry, not a Rosetta Stone, a tabula rasa, that people just read into him their most feverish dreams. Hence the fainting. Well, they're not fainting now. As you know, Obama was called in to stump for Joe Biden, who is trapped in the basement and can't get out. And on the rare occasions when Biden escapes the basement, no one wants to see him. You can be sure that the Biden campaign assumed that having Obama on the campaign circuit would draw the crowds, offsetting the enthusiasm that Trump supporters feel for him. I just want to break in and say that it was mentioned, not by me, but I mentioned it yesterday, that Wilmington, Delaware is 30 miles away from Philadelphia. So Barack Obama, two-term president of the United States, is 30 miles away, stumping for your campaign, and you can't be arsed to leave your basement and join him there. Trump supporters, by the way, do not support him with reverence or awe. Instead, he's one of them, from his humor and conversational style to his evident desire to help improve their lives. In other words, it's not about some imaginary light he'll bring to the word, but back to Obama. And there's some videos here showing his campaign stop in Philadelphia. Don't you love his little bullhorn as he sneaks up on these 15 or so people? It's just so embarrassing. It's like, what's that noise? Some jerk with a bullhorn. Who is it? I think it's Barack Obama. Oh, screw yourself. Wait, you're right. It's Barack Obama. Why is he yelling at us with a bullhorn? Why is he wandering the streets yelling at people? This is from Mariana Sotomayor at NBC. Barack Obama told community organizers the importance of their work and encouraged them to work as hard as you can in these final weeks. He also stressed the need to stay safe and wear a mask, joking that he wears it even though it accentuates how big his ears are. Hilarious. Obama then spoke at a car rally, which seems to have all the thrill of a drive-in movie on a Wednesday night. Allegedly, there were hundreds of cars honking for this magic moment. Yeah, there weren't hundreds of cars, as you can see from the aerial footage. Meanwhile, here's footage from Donald Trump's rally, not in Philadelphia, but in Erie, Pennsylvania, population 96,000. Crowds lined up in rainy Erie hours ahead of President Trump's rally tonight. And a pretty impressive crowd. It's true, this article concludes that Obama draws bigger crowds than Biden, but that's not saying much when you consider that just 12 years ago, Obama was a political god. If I were a betting woman, I would bet that Obama's efforts on Biden's behalf will not change the outcome of the upcoming election. Again, Ebony Bowden from the New York Post. President Trump on Wednesday accused tech giants Twitter and Facebook of interfering in the upcoming election following their unprecedented censorship of the Post's reporting on Hunter Biden's overseas business dealings. During a Rose Garden town hall with Sinclair Broadcast Group taped Tuesday, the commander-in-chief was pressed on Twitter's decision to block its users from sharing the articles and suspending the Post's account for a week. Do you think that Twitter and Facebook are biased in this election? Eric Bolling, the host of America This Week, asked Trump. 100%, Trump said. And frankly, that's turning out to be as big a story as the corruption itself. They're trying to protect him because that's the way it is with the Democrats. It's a part of the Democratic Party, I guess. They're trying to protect Biden from this corruption where they got caught, and that's turning out to be just as big a story. Censorship, Bolling asked? Of course, it's at a level nobody thought possible, Trump said. Election interference, Bolling furthered? Yeah, 100%, the president said. Bolling asked Trump if he would continue his effort to repeal Section 230, a federal law that largely exempts online platforms from legal liability for material posted by their users. Trump responded, nobody thought Section 230 was going to be devised for purposes like this, and what they're doing, no one has ever seen anything like it. Let's go back to the chat. Fleetwood Mac. Yeah. Well, we know that Bill and Hillary Clinton were very big fans of Fleetwood Mac. You know, don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Jay Smith says America is on the verge of a revolution. Donald Robertson says, speaking of superstar, the reason late boomers will always be superior to millennials is because we came of age listening to Karen Carpenter. Who came to age? Oh, the boomers came of age listening to Karen Carpenter? She was in the 70s, but that's okay. Charisma is a self-reinforcing loop, says Chogokin666. Well, you lose charisma as you become defined. The media likes to talk about Donald Trump's unlikability as measured by polls. Well, of course he's going to be disliked because people know so much about him and because he is so forceful in his opinions and the way that he expresses them. When Joe Biden says, I'm not going to give you my opinion on court packing because that would become the story. Did you see the parody in the Babylon Bee? Man refuses to give fiancé opinion on adultery until after the marriage. YouTube 13, he rode his little horsey as he approached the stage. Donald Robertson says Obama does have a knack for extemporaneously reaching deep down and articulating an idea very eloquently when it appears he is about to choke. He has this trick where, Steve Saylor noted this, that someone will say blah, 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 and then Obama, well, blah, 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 blah. They said repeating what the person has said, which is it's a well-known device to build trust. It's also a well-known manipulative device, and in fact, Guilfoyle employed it in the final season of Silicon Valley, when the horrid HR lady said it was a problem because he had this high unlikability quotient. Well, he's like a star programmer. Who cares how unlikable he is? But he has access to these various techniques, such as repeating what people are saying. That's one of them. Using their names, asking them about, birthdays and pets, that sort of thing. Mike F. says, if Biden goes down as a griftmonger, people can remind it that O called his Veep pick best decision he ever made. Mike F. says, Sonic Youth cover of Superstar is super dreamy and breathy. I would say yes, it is. No didgeridoo. I don't even want to talk about didgeridoo. Michael Mike says, Brackstar Obama, as Jello Biafra called him. Okay. Mike F. Short-fingered vulgarian was the original snipe from National Lampoon. Then Marco Rubio made it small hands. Hunter has become the hunted, says Jim Bowden. Shokakin 666, all the news we see fit to print. Sad thing that every politician has a crime syndicate revolving around their solar system. Some are worse than others. Biden is evidently depraved based on his demeanor alone, says Chogokin 666. Okay. Donald Trump has mentioned his plastic surgery. Now, the media was always on about Ronald Reagan. You dye your hair, don't you? No, I don't. Supposedly, they got hairs from his barber and had them tested. Well, it was fairly obvious to me that Ronald Reagan dyed his hair, in the same way that Bob Dole dyed his hair. A lot of men seem to be dyeing their hair. You see, my hair is gray. My hair started to go gray in, my 30s. Now it's almost completely gray. And I noticed about 10 years ago, because the subject had been brought to my attention, and I started looking at men in their 40s, and I thought, I'm not seeing any gray heads here. So, men are dyeing their hair in a big way. But the fact that Joe Biden, who we know to have gone through 2 sessions of hair replacement, one failed with the plugs, second, more successful. He's had so much plastic surgery that he has what they call the Joker face. And nobody in the media talks about this. I mean, how vain do you have to be in your 70s to get plastic surgery? He's not an actress, Perhaps that's the reason why apparently people in the know, the good people, are so upset by Jim Carrey's impersonation of Biden on Saturday Night Live, because it really taps into the manic Joker face. Okay, yes, the Ukrainian candidate. This is an absolutely incredible story, and if there was anything resembling a news media, I suppose it would become a huge story. This is from National File. Michigan governor says COVID restrictions won't end until Biden's president. This sounds crazy, right? This is from Frank Salvato. In a stunningly transparent exercise of partisan politics, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer told Meet the Press that all Americans have to do to discard the COVID masks and freely travel and associate is to vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on November 3rd. Whitmer told Meet the Press host Chuck Todd that the draconian lockdowns and COVID restrictions that she and other Democrat governors have inflicted on their state's residents can end if Americans, quote, vote for change, unquote, meaning voting for Joe Biden. Quote, if you're tired of wearing masks, or you wish you were in church this morning, or watching college football, or wish your kids were in school in person, Whitmer said to Todd, it's time for change in this country, and that's why we've got to elect Joe Biden. She's blackmailing the people of Michigan, saying, telling Christians, you're not going to get your church back. You're not going to get your churches back unless Joe Biden is president. College football. You want college football back? Vote for Joe Biden. Want your kids to actually go to school? I'm afraid you're going to have to vote for Joe Biden. Yeah. Again, if there were responsible media, it'd be an absolutely huge story. Maybe it's time to liberate Michigan, as a famous person said. From Charlie Spearing at Breitbart, Trump on Wednesday ridiculed cable news media at a campaign rally in North Carolina for focusing so intently on the coronavirus pandemic. You turn on to this MSDNC and fake news CNN, all you hear is COVID, 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 COVID. He said as his crowd of supporters booed. They all put on because they want to scare the hell out of everyone. The president said the country was rounding the corner on the coronavirus pandemic, but acknowledged that cable news hated when he said that. They say cases are up. Yeah, testing is up. We have more testing than India, China, and almost every other country put together. Trump promised that life would return to normal in 2021. Normal life will fully resume, and next year will be the greatest economic year in the history of our country. He warned that if Biden was elected president, Americans would face more punishing lockdowns. Biden will delay therapies, prolong the pandemic, close your schools, and shut down your country. This election is a choice between a Trump super recovery or a Biden deep depression. It is between a Trump boom or a Biden lockdown. Well, I like the way he framed that. Let's talk about masks. So we have to wear masks because that means that there will be fewer cases. Well, at rationalground.com, more mask charts. Let's look at the state of Kentucky. Mask mandate, July the 9th. Huge surge of cases. And then the cases fall. Mask mandate extended, August the 7th, they rise again. And mask mandate extended September 10th, a huge rise. And mask mandate extended October 6th, up like this. So it doesn't seem to have done any good. Let's look at the Czech Republic. Pretty initial mask mandate, March the 19th. Mask mandate lifted May the 25th, and it's like a snake at the bottom. It's barely moving. Second mask mandate, September the 8th, like that. Whereas Sweden goes like this. Wisconsin, mask vaccine mandate, August the 1st, a slight fall, and then just a shooting up in cases. New Mexico, the mask mandate, May the 16th, down, then up, then down, then a huge increase in July, then a huge fall till September, and then another huge rise. In Hungary, which cases had pretty much flatlined, and then mask mandate, and then in August, just straight up. Similar in Argentina. It doesn't seem to make any difference whatsoever. But it couldn't hurt, right? Couldn't hurt. A fellow I used to work with in radio in Edmonton, Robin Allen, he railed against the safety Nazis, and he used to say, why don't we just get it over with? Why don't we just require that everyone have to wear a bicycle helmet at all times? And I'm thinking, yeah, we seem to be heading in that direction. From Lockdown Skeptics, Will Jones, record rise in cases, but October still normal for respiratory disease. And of course, COVID-19 is a respiratory disease. But if COVID infections, hospital admissions, and deaths do keep rising throughout the winter, there would be nothing unusual about that. Herd immunity doesn't mean no one gets infected anymore, especially in the colder months. It means enough people have enough resistance to prevent a repeat of the spring and keep it within normal bounds. COVID-19 isn't the only respiratory disease around, of course, but this year the rest are being strangely timid. Flu and pneumonia hospital admissions and deaths have been trending well below average since May, with no sign of change yet, leaving COVID largely having the field to itself. That's one reason the rise in COVID hospital admissions isn't likely to overwhelm the NHS. There's been a corresponding fall in admissions for flu and pneumonia. Of course, there's always the possibility that people are not being sickened by COVID, even if they tested positive for it. They've been sickened by pneumonia, as so many people are every single year. Why were democratic citizens so willing to surrender their liberty? Stacey Rudin has written an excellent piece for the American Institute for Economic Research exploring the question of why citizens of liberal democracies around the world complied so readily with draconian government diktats. One has to wonder, how did this come about? Why weren't we behaving this way before, when seasonal influenza is known to kill up to 650,000 people globally every single year? Why didn't anyone ever care about saving all those millions of people? If we really can stop infections, we murdered all of them. Fortunately for our collective conscience, none of our pre-COVID public health guidelines so much as suggests that human behavior can eliminate infections as necessary to stop deaths. We have always understood that we have limited control over invisible biological agents, which is why we do not opt to incur the gigantic costs of lockdowns and similar. We realize the effort to save every life, while noble, is unfortunately futile. We cannot stop death, so we accept it and balance it with many other human interests. We know that pandemics causing upwards of 2 million deaths can and do occur, yet our CDC does not ever recommend isolating healthy people outside of the household of the sick, closing non-essential businesses, or closing schools for longer than 12 weeks. So why did we adopt all of these extreme, harmful, and deadly measures in 2020 for COVID-19, a pandemic that has not even caused statistically significant excess deaths in nations with short lockdowns and no lockdowns? Why did we depart so completely from our regulations? Did new science develop? I can't find any. All pre-COVID epidemiological and public health literature unanimously acknowledges that it is impossible to stop infectious diseases with isolation and quarantine. Good question, and one that most lockdown skeptics have been puzzling over. Why isn't everyone more like us? As Lionel Shriver said, the supine capitulation to a de facto police state in a country long regarded as a cradle of liberty has been one of the most depressing spectacles I've ever witnessed. In a matter of days, busybodies are ratting out neighbors for going for a run twice. These people would be like pigs in muck in the German Democratic Republic. Rudin's answer is that politicians succeeded in persuading the public that they could prevent death, something the public, who'd already been terrified out of their wits by the politicians and their handmaidens in the media, wanted to hear. Rudin wrote, to the calm, rational mind, it is clear that suppression is a set of brakes that should only be imposed to the minimum extent necessary to manage hospital capacity. Any extra suppression just saves infections for later, when you may or may not have a vaccine or improved treatment at extraordinary cost. To scared, irrational people, however, suppression provides at least some hope of avoiding a horrific early death. You cannot blame terrified people for their feelings, but you can and should blame the media and government for misinterpreting personal risk during a pandemic. No cost is too high to keep open the possibility of staying alive. People focused on that will not comprehend any second or third tier consequences of their self-preservation efforts. Does anyone understand second or third tier consequences of anything? Yeah, green economy. Let's move to the green economy. It's going to be great. How's that going to work exactly? And what about the costs of shutting down the existing energy sources? And what are the costs involved, including, environmental costs and carbon footprint of tooling up for this green revolution? And these people who are going to lose their jobs in the oil and gas industry, what happens to them? Oh, we'll give them great new jobs. Doing what exactly? If it were possible for governments to give everyone great jobs, that's what they would do. Okay. Let's move on to Alex Berenson. Oh, yes, the famous Danish subject on masks. To be clear, the Danish study is the most important research on masks. If it shows they don't work, we need to know so we can try other solutions. If it shows they're harmful, we need to know so we don't tell people to wear them. Politics cannot hold health hostage. Publish. Hey, did you all notice that the front page articles in the New York Times, Washington Post, etc., about the apparent censorship of this crucial study about the effectiveness of masking? Oh, it must not be news then. The fact that the lead subject of this article tested negative for both the infection and antibodies tells you all you need to know about long COVID. Kudos to the Times for getting back on the kitty panic porn express to nowhere, yes. The story from the New York Times at 12, she's a COVID long hauler. Yes, and she's tested negative for both infective and antibodies because I guess she just knows that she has COVID. Okay, let's go to J5 Killer here. Yes, and he repeats, which is well known to some of us, the 3 rules of the trumpening. I don't know, these what are like 3 years old now, maybe older. 1, always trust Trump. 2, never bet against Trump. 3, don't get tired of winning. Always trust Trump means I'm not going to offer him unsolicited advice about debate prep. I don't know what his strategy is, but I know what his track record is, and I know enough to trust it in debates. Oh, MAGA hats are hot again, apparently. Fasten your seatbelts and hang on tight. Trump has jammed the accelerator all the way to the floor and named his machine directly at the Biden jalopy. The next 10 days are going to be epic. Anders Hagstrom had tweeted, this exchange between Trump and Leslie Stahl of CBS is insane. She repeatedly insists the Biden laptops can't be verified, so reporters shouldn't talk about it. Trump asks her why it can't be verified. Her answer, because it can't be verified. Yeah, is idiocracy? Do we live in idiocracy now? But what are electrolytes? They're what plants crave. J5 Killer says, leave it to Trump to turn a gotcha interview into a gotcha interview of the interviewer. And finally, from J5, I've been saying this for 2 months. Biden has spent so much time in Delaware, that state has to be in play. Of course, there's an alternative explanation that Joe Biden is literally scared to death of coming down with COVID-19. That's why he's spending so much time in the basement. Now, I had never heard of a reporter called Brandy. What's her name? Brandy? Well, I'll come up with it in just a minute when these stories come up. There's a woman who is a reporter for NBC. Yeah, here she is, Brandy Zadronzi. And I noticed that her Twitter avatar, what was it taken, like 20 years ago? 25 years ago? She's trying to make herself look like a teenager, which is not a good sign. She doxes people. That's her thing. Tucker Carlson and Darren J. Beatty expose NBC reporter whose job it is to harass and intimidate Trump supporters. Darren Beatty said she will do everything she can to unearth anonymous Trump supporters, basically so she can ruin their lives. What's happened to the media? It's all tattletales, sneaks, and snitches now. This is from Revolver. Harassment, censorship, and intimidation of Trump supporters by any means necessary is a key element of the color revolution strategy. And Brandy Zadronzi of NBC News is a key hatchet woman working on behalf of the oligarchs. She has a long history of targeting Trump supporters for doxing, censorship, and harassment. She poses as a neutral reporter, but like so many other journalists in 2020, she is simply an ideologically motivated hitman. Not only does she brag about doxing Trump supporters, she actually wrote the book on it. Incidentally, there is one group of people Zadronzi does not support doxing: pedophiles. Allow us to explain. Zadronzi was a major contributor to the Verification Handbook, a book for online journalists. Specifically, she wrote a guide on how to unethically dox anonymous people online. She appears to use paid dark data search engines to dox the personal information of anonymous Trump supporters online, obtaining property records, phone information, and even their Amazon wish lists. She's part of a press corps deployed to cover misinformation, disinformation, and extremism after the internet fueled President Donald Trump's win in 2016. This new journal beat was created to surveil, slander, and censor online voices that counter ruling class narratives. Let's see, from this Democracy Matters Strategic Plan for Action, Private and Confidential. We will apply lessons learned. Democrats got clobbered in the digital space, and the right colonized Facebook, which has established a virtual monopoly on information distribution. Media Matters will continue its core mission of disarming right-wing misinformation. Serial misinformers and right-wing propagandists inhabiting everything from social media to the highest levels of government will be exposed, discredited. Internet and social media platforms like Google and Facebook will no longer uncritically and without consequences host and enrich fake news sites and propagandists. Trump will be defeated either through impeachment or at the ballot box in 2020. Why did NBC News hire an obviously partisan hack to do the dirty work of George Soros-funded Media Matters? It turns out this disinformation expert, practitioner, not analyst, authored a how-to guide for doxing intensely personal digital data of anonymous Trump supporters online. This guide is marketed to fellow journalists who flunked the same ethics class. This is the aforementioned Verification Handbook. Number one, investigating social media accounts by Brandy Zadronzi. Oh, usernames is someone we all have, which is fine because it's almost always where we start. Such was the case of a then New Hampshire Republican state representative who built one of Reddit's most popular and odious men's communities. The investigation behind the unmasking of the architects of Reddit's The Red Pill, now a quarantined community, started with the username PK_atheist. Yes, since she went after the Columbia Bugle. The earliest follows, let's look at their followers. Yes, the earliest follows of Max DeLarge, an account claiming to be the editor of the Columbia Bugle, are San Diego-specific news sources and San Diego-specific sports account. Since many of the Columbia Bugle's tweets include videos from San Diego Trump rallies and events at the UCSD, we can be fairly confident that the person behind the account lives near San Diego. And she boasts about this. But yeah, how about doxing pedophiles? Well, Zadronzi is passionately committed to doxing and silencing her political foes. There's another group she is more sympathetic to: pedophiles. In 2018, Alan Malcolm drove to a house in Bristol, Connecticut, planning to rape a 14-year-old. Fortunately, there was no 14-year-old. Instead, Malcolm was catfished by the local group Pop Squad, short for Prey on Predators, which shamed him on camera shortly after Malcolm hanged himself. In a long article written shortly afterwards, a hostile article on a vigilante group that targeted sexual predators, Zadronzi complained at length about the suffering of pedophiles confronted by the Pop Squad. In an incredible segment of the article, she glamorized a tall and handsome alleged pederast who wholly subscribed to the American dream. They're not exaggerating. Malcolm was tall and handsome. The oldest son of Jamaican immigrants, he wholly subscribed to the idea of the American dream. In high school, Malcolm was vice president of the Future Business Leaders of America Club, assistant captain of the tennis and swim teams, and a member of the Student Council and Model United Nations. He started a social marketing business at 15. After graduating in 2016, Malcolm filled his Instagram and Facebook feeds with photos of New York high-rises, bathroom selfies in three-piece suits, and links to news articles in which he was featured. In other words, Bugman Supreme. He went to community college, seems kind of underachieving, while working as a junior buyer for a local circuit board manufacturer, and was the subject of a Connecticut public television series that profiled recent high school graduates. Earlier this year, he was named one of Litchfield County's 40 leaders under 40. Starting in high school, Malcolm used apps like Tinder and Grindr to meet men from around the state. Sounds illegal, actually. On that October night, he had come to Bristol to meet someone younger, purportedly a 14-year-old boy going on 15, according to a video posed by the digital vigilante group known as Pop Squad. Oh dear, oh dear. You know, it's funny that when Trump gets asked or harangued, really, on the subject of QAnon, and he says he doesn't know anything about it, but he understands that they don't like pedophiles, and he thinks that that's a good thing. The media seems to think that it's, again, this is a gotcha moment where Trump is framing the argument, they don't like pedophiles, and I don't like pedophiles, with the suggestion is that people who oppose me have no problem with pedophiles. You know, journalists are supposed to be in the communications business, but they don't seem to be very good at it anymore. Let's go to the chat. In about 19 minutes, I'm going to start talking about what's on Theater Thursday this week, which is Werner Herzog's remake of Murnau's Nosferatu. Okay. Oh, more Karen Carpenter. Jim Smith says, has Luke... yeah, okay. We're not talking about this show. Bugman Supreme, seriously. Yes. Yes. There's three-piece suits and UN club. I was in the UN club in high school. It's not something that, you know, I leave high school, I'm going to be boasting about. Hell, I was in junior achievement. And I was in junior achievement because some guidance counselor said that you wouldn't get a job after you left school if you weren't in junior achievement. This meant me subjecting myself to months of embarrassment, knocking on strangers' doors and saying, will you please buy this rubbish that we made? Ugh, that was not pleasant. Hikma Warrior says, what a shame. He seemed reasonable. Oh, is this Eche? Is he been doxxed? Donald Robertson says Eche wasn't doxing, but engaging in clever indirect intimidation of Trump supporters. Okay, Eche Lux. Okay. Peak Fed. Well, okay. An accusation is made about him. I knew him a little bit some time ago. Trump put Leslie Stahl to shame in that 60 Minutes interview, says Donald Robertson. What's that? Betwixt says, is Biden afraid of contracting COVID because it would mean not being able to smell children's hair? I don't really understand why any grown man would be interested in smelling a child's hair. I can't imagine that any grown man would be interested in smelling the hair of any, you know, his girlfriend, wife, why anyone else? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's just, ugh. Betwixt said, did you ever consider moving to Ireland before 2020? Obviously. I thought about it. I seriously considered moving to Britain in 1985. In fact, I quit my job at UBC where I'd been working for 12 years. And I got all the paperwork necessary for residency there, which is available to me because my mother and grandmother were born there. But I got as far as New York, and then I changed my mind. I guess this isn't going to be a KMG stream for the ages, says Don Robertson. Oh dear. Oh dear. Well, I'll try to pick it up here in the last 46 minutes. One of the advantages of using your own name is that you don't need to worry about being doxxed. Disadvantage of using your own name is that effectively you're doxxed, that you become unemployable in the straight world. I came to terms with it, you know? When I first got a Twitter account, I was still doing some straight writing, and I thought I'm going to have to be careful about what I write. And then the company that I was working for decided to fire all of their writers. And then I thought, I don't know, I'll just say whatever I like. I'll just say whatever I like on Twitter now. Brandy Zedronzi, reporter in NBC News, I'm reading from her Twitter description. Internet platforms, politics. I used to be a librarian. That's a shocker. Absolute shocker. More on the Pope, or should we say the gay curious Pope. Mexican television broadcaster confirmed Thursday that Pope Francis's bombshell comments endorsing same-sex civil unions were made during a May 2019 interview that was never broadcast in its entirety. Broadcaster Televisa said Thursday that the emphasis of this interview was on clergy sexual abuse and suggested it didn't consider the comments on civil unions as newsworthy because Francis had previously indicated support for them. Did he now? The Vatican, which had the full interview in its archives, apparently allowed the comments to be aired now in the documentary Francesco, which premiered Wednesday. In the movie, which was shown at the Rome Film Festival, Francis said gays shouldn't be kicked out of families or made miserable. What we have to do is a civil union law. That way they are legally covered. But a source in Mexico familiar with the interview said the original raw footage the Vatican provided to Televisa from the interview did not include the quote on civil unions. The source spoke on condition of anonymity because he was not authorized to speak to the press. The Vatican did not respond to requests for comment. When the Pope consents to such interviews, the Vatican television unit films them and provides the full footage to the correspondent in question to edit and choose what to use. The Vatican takes that edit and the final product goes out simultaneously via the broadcaster and Vatican media. The civil union comments caused a firestorm, thrilling progressives and alarming conservatives, given that official Vatican teaching prohibits any such endorsement of homosexual unions. One of Francis's top communication advisors, the Reverend Antonio Spadero, insisted Wednesday the Pope's comments were old news, saying they were made during the May 2019 interview with Televisa. Well, if someone gives an interview and part of that interview is suppressed and then it's revealed 18 months later, approximately, say, and it's really, really noteworthy, then that is news. It's not old news because no one knew about it before. And this is what it comes down to. The Pope has given many interviews in Italy to an old lefty, avowed atheist, where he says some pretty outlandish, shocking things. And at first, the so-called conservative Catholics said, well, no, this was obviously taken out of context. Why would he keep going back to a man who was taking him out of context? Why doesn't the Vatican simply say, no, he never said that, it's a lie? So why isn't the Vatican denying this now? The same reason that the Bidens are not denying the authenticity of the laptop, because they can't. They can't do it. Now, this fellow who is made the documentary Francesco, his name is Evgeny Afanevsky. He's a Russian-born Israeli-American film director, actually, who was born in the Tatar ASSR in 1972. In the 90s, he became an Israeli citizen and served in the Israeli Defense Forces. As he became involved in the film industry, he relocated to Los Angeles in the United States through connections to Menahem Golan, living there since 1999. And Menahem Golan, of course, is famous or infamous for the Cannon Group, which a company which he formed with Yoram Globus. And there are two hilarious documentaries about Golan Globus, because they made like about 5 good movies. They made hundreds of movies, and about 5 of them are good. And they just made so many movies. It turns out that the director of Francesco is the director, co-writer, and producer of a feature film called Oy Vey, My Son is Gay. I'm not making this up. I found it at IMDb. I would have thought that, this guy's a filmmaker. You're going to look him up on IMDb, right? Apparently that is too much work for reporters now. Now, it's got some names in this film. Lainey Kazan, Saul Rubinek, Bruce Vilanch, Carmen Electra, and it's a plot. How many movies have been made the same plot? Every Friday night, Shirley invites another perfect woman for Shabbat dinner in hopes that her son Nelson will marry a nice Jewish girl. Nelson, however, has something to tell them. He's gay. So I guess we could say that the director of the Francesco documentary has an agenda. Cardinal Burke has had something to say on what the Pope had to say. The worldwide communications media have reported with strong emphasis as a change of course the news that Pope Francis has declared that persons in the homosexual condition as children of God have a right to have a family, and that no one should be thrown out or made unhappy because of it. Moreover, they write that he has declared what we have to create is a civil union. In this way, they will be legally covered. I have defended this. Cardinal Burke says, such declarations generate great bewilderment and cause confusion and error among Catholic faithful, inasmuch as they are contrary to the teaching of sacred scripture and sacred tradition, and of the recent magisterium by which the Church guards, protects, and interprets the whole deposit of faith contained in sacred scripture and sacred tradition. They cause wonderment and error regarding the Church's teaching among people of goodwill who sincerely wish to know what the Catholic Church teaches. They impose upon pastors of souls the duty of conscience to make fitting and necessary clarifications. First of all, the context and the occasion of such declarations make them devoid of any magisterial weight. They are rightly interpreted as simple private opinions of the person who made them. These declarations do not bind in any manner the consciences of the faithful, who are rather obliged to adhere with religious submission to what sacred scripture and sacred tradition and the ordinary magisterium of the Church teach on the matter in question. In particular, the following are to be noted. Basing itself on sacred scripture, which presents homosexual acts as acts of great depravity, tradition has always declared that homosexual acts are intrinsically disordered. The particular and sometimes deep-seated tendencies of persons, men and women, in the homosexual condition, which are for them a trial, although they may not in themselves constitute a sin, represent nonetheless an objectively disordered inclination. The faithful, and in particular Catholic politicians, are held to oppose the legal recognition of homosexual unions. The right to form a family is not a private right to vindicate, but must correspond to the plan of the Creator, who has willed the human being in sexual difference, male and female. He created them, thus calling man, male and female, to the transmission of life. It is a source of deepest sadness and pressing pastoral concern that the private opinions reported with so much emphasis by the press and attributed to Pope Francis do not correspond to the constant teaching of the Church as it is expressed in sacred scripture and sacred tradition, and is guarded, protected, and interpreted by the magisterium. Equally sad and concerning is the turmoil, confusion, and error they cause among the Catholic faithful, as is the scandal they cause in general by giving the totally false impression that the Catholic Church has had a change of course that has changed its perennial teaching regarding such fundamental and critical questions. Well, this Pope, it's just one thing after another. And here he is speaking on October the 20th at a lectern. And it's the fashion now that there always has to be some slogan in front. And this one says, "No one is saved alone, peace and fraternity." This is from LifeSite, Dorothy Cummings McLean. Pope Francis spoke twice yesterday about the importance of saving fellow human beings and not seeking to be saved alone. The context for his remark against a selfish approach to salvation was yesterday's international meeting of prayer for peace. The two halves of the event were simultaneous prayer services in various locations near Rome's Piazza del Campidoglio, and then in an interfaith ceremony within the piazza itself. Pope Francis presided first over the Christian prayer service in the Basilica of St. Mary of the Altar of Heaven. There he gave a homily in which he reflected on those who mocked the crucified Christ by saying, "Save yourself." At the supreme moment of his suffering and love, many of those present cruelly taunted him with the words, "Save yourself," the pontiff said to the Christian gathering. That is a great temptation. It spares no one, including us Christians, the temptation to think of only saving ourselves and our circle. But Francis stated also that save is a religious connotation, and the scribes and Pharisees who joined in the mockery thought that Jesus' saving of others was useless, as it seemed he could not save himself. Francis took up the theme of salvation again at the interfaith ceremony at the Piazza del Campidoglio, making it more clear that he means an earthly temporal salvation, peace, prosperity, security, and happiness brought about through fraternal cooperation, not eternal life. The lesson learned from the recent pandemic, if we wish to be honest, is the awareness that we are a global community, all in the same boat, where no one person's problems are the problems of all. The pontiff added that fraternity will help everyone understand that we can only be saved together. This is, it's heresy. It's pure heresy. Theologian Dr. Peter Krasniewski, said Francis has substituted a horizontal, anthropological, one might even say a psychological notion of salvation for the traditional meaning of salvation in Christianity, the decisive intervention of God's grace in the life of a sinful man, converting his heart and making him a new man. Author John Zmirak addressed the studied ambiguity of the pontiff's discourses, which he described as a form of gaslighting. Pope Francis's performances are episodes from the objective room in C.S. Lewis's apocalyptic novel, That Hideous Strength, Zmirak said. They seem designed to break down our sense of normalcy, order, clarity, and sanity, to make us despair of our God-given facilities of discernment and collapse into a fideistic surrender to power. It's power over the church, the state's power over us, and globalist power over our governments. We can do nothing alone, only as termites in the colony. We are not dignified images of God, but interchangeable cells in a collective. Rorata Cayley has much to say about this, and what can you would expect. Let's see. From the Catholic News Agency, some remarks from Pope Francis and Francesco are the result of heavy editing of previous interviews. The Vatican has not yet commented on the Pope's comments on civil unions in the film, and the Twitter account Catholic Sat said, the Pope's comments on civil unions have not been disputed by the Vatican, despite multiple requests for clarity. Oh, and this picture of the Amy Coney Barrett protest riots, and there's nobody. There is nobody there. Again, if the Vatican just says the Pope never says this, or this was taken out of context or re-edited, they could say that, but they are not saying it. As Rorata Cayley says, the most ridiculous thing of the people carrying water for the controversial Francis Declaration on homosexual unions is that the Vatican itself, with a huge PR and press office team and media organizations, has said nothing. They could have immediately denied it yesterday. And I wanted to see what Mark Shea had to say about this, and of course he thinks that it is just wonderful. It's wonderful, but at the same time, it's not really a news story, because it's it's pastoral work, and it has no effect on theology, of course. Let's see, he writes, I'm surprised by this development, not because it is heterodox, it's not, but because, well, I just figured he had enough on his plate and would not be courting more controversy, what with being a very old man who was already locked in mortal combat with a whole bunch of enemies who will only seize on this perfectly orthodox prudential judgment to smite him hip and thigh. It is not a prudential judgment, particularly as a priest, which is what the Pope is, to meet men who are committing grave sin and say, who am I to judge? Not my problem. That is not prudential. It is the opposite of prudential, unless, of course, Bergoglio doesn't believe in any of it, and I'm rather suspect that he doesn't believe in any of it. Interesting piece in Chronicles from Serge Trifkovich, who, incidentally, Jason Kenney, you remember Jason Kenney, champion of free speech? When Jason Kenney was immigration minister, he banned Serge Trifkovich from Canada. Why? Because Trifkovich has written extensively on what he considers to be a Muslim menace to Europe and the rest of the Western world, and we couldn't have someone like that in Canada. He has a piece in Chronicles where he has written for decades on the German city of Constance, where there was a council in the 15th century. He tells some interesting stories about the history of the city. It was saved in World War II because it was right on the border with Switzerland, and after the Americans, the U.S. Army Air Force, had pounded the hell out of a Swiss city, causing an international scandal, and an apology from President Roosevelt and reparations, the U.S. Army Air Force was warned to stay well away from the Swiss border, and the city of Constance took advantage of this by turning all the lights on and painting red crosses on everything to give bomber pilots the idea that this was actually part of Switzerland. But he points out that the Council of Constance sacked popes, that John the 23rd was sacked. This ended the schism and the rival Vatican in Avignon. And the point of this is that it is possible to sack a pope. Something to keep in mind. I'm going to take one last look at the chat before I move on to Theater Thursday. I used to read Chronicles, says Hickma Warrior. No, it's well worth reading. Are there bots available for YouTube, says Donald Robertson? It seems that gatekeepers and feds pop up at the most opportune times. Oh, my tie. This is my, I forgot where I got it. I've had it for decades. It's various flags of the time of the American Revolution. There's the Gadsden flag, don't tread on me, but many, many others. I quite like it myself. Okay. See, Claire Ka is in the house. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. We're going to talk about a movie from 1979 by Werner Herzog, and it is called Nosferatu, a Phantom der Nacht. Now, there were two versions made of this. There was a dubbed version, or version in English, and there was a version in German. And I watched the German version because I don't like dub movies or people speaking English who are not competent with English. It seems kind of clownish with me. I mean, we're all used to subtitles now, but for the longest time, subtitles were considered simply for the art house crowd. Although I was informed, reading a biography of Woody Allen, that apparently in France, all the movies are dubbed. They bring in American movies and they dub them all because French audiences won't put up with subtitles. Werner Herzog was born in 1942. He is one of the modern masters of cinema. He makes both feature films and documentaries, and he is celebrated for both. And he has become a meme in his own right because his narration of his documentary features his dark, deep Bavarian voice, typically speaking in a very existential way, which has become, there are so many parodies of him. One of my favorite shows, it's a Super Bowl a Super Bowl commercial made in the style of various filmmakers, Wes Anderson, David Lynch, Werner Herzog. And Werner Herzog's narration is all about the pointlessness of this activity. Herzog is been called a gonzo filmmaker. If you see, say, Aguirre, The Wrath of God from 1972, and the scenes in the Andes, it's just astonishing, because there's like hundreds of people in these shots risking their lives coming down a mountainside. Some of his other famous films are Fitzcarraldo in 1982, which involves, it's based on a true story of a man who wants an opera house in the Andes. And an enormous thing, which you're not going to move to a place like that. Well, this fellow gets it in his head that he has to move this. And you see, I suppose part of the appeal of Herzog, particularly his early films, I suppose he's like William Friedkin in this. It's not that he's, endangering the people who work with him. He's endangering himself. He wouldn't ask people to do things that he wouldn't do himself. I suppose he made this movie, a sequel to Bad Lieutenant, called Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans, again with Nicolas Cage. He specializes, I suppose, in documentaries now. Grizzly Man from 2005, which is the story of Timothy Treadwell, is based mostly on footage that Treadwell took of himself. His deranged belief that he could become a pal to wild bears in Alaska. And Herzog takes a suitably dim view of this. It's very good, but it is it's very harrowing. Now, Nosferatu stars as the Count Dracula. It stars Klaus Kinski. And Klaus Kinski, who lived from 1926 to 1991, was a very strange man. He appeared in many films with Herzog, the aforementioned Aguirre, The Wrath of God, Wojciech, Fitzcarraldo, and Koba Verdre. I found out from a documentary that Herzog knew Kinski before they worked together in the theater, in film, and he was nuts. He was completely nuts before he got involved. I suppose there's a tendency to look at Kinski in his films and think, oh no, he's acting crazy, right? Or if you look at his subsequent behavior, that that fame made him crazy. Nope, he was crazy right from the very beginning. So this film, I have to say that we've been lucky in recent years because the coverage of Herzog on DVD was first spotty, and then we got more. We got some collections, but the quality was poor. That's changed now. There are two big collections. There's the British Film Institute collection, which contains 18 films, which is quite a bargain at £53. It is, of course, Region 2. There is a rival set available in the United States. According to DVD Beaver, the BFI set, at least with regard to Nosferatu, is much superior. It's a Shout Factory is the American box set. But either way, this is just it's just a treasure of delights to have so much Werner Herzog available in one box on Blu-ray, and I can highly recommend the BFI set. Now, Nosferatu is a adaptation, a remake, a homage, if you like, of a 1922 film made by Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau, one of the great pioneers of cinema. That's really selling him short to call him a pioneer. His films are great. You don't have to look at them in terms of, oh yes, these were baby steps. No, his half dozen last films are among the greatest films ever made. Nosferatu in 1922, it was a ripoff, if you like, because Dracula, which is of course the novel written by Bram Stoker, was still in copyright at the time, and Murnau did not want to pay, or he was not given permission to make an adaptation. So he decided to change just enough so that he thought that it would make him legally inviolate. Well, he was sorely mistaken. The courts held against him, and it was ordered that every print of Nosferatu be destroyed. Luckily, some were squirreled away, and restoration work has been done. And now we can see Nosferatu pretty much as it appeared in 1922. Now, of course, this is a black and white film, although it is the style of the day, colorized. These frames are colorized green or sometimes blue, and it is silent with intertitles. So I suppose that's reason enough to remake Nosferatu, because you can make it in color with full speech and in wide screen. But that's not, Herzog does more than this with it. I have to say, I have to emphasize here that this is a Gothic horror film. And we're so familiar with the Dracula tale. Everyone knows the Dracula tale. The Dracula tale has been filmed dozens or hundreds of times, and perhaps more to the point, it is the subject of hundreds or thousands of parodies. I want to suck your blood. That Dracula has become something of a camp figure, and there is absolutely nothing camp whatsoever about Herzog's Nosferatu. When the movie was first shown in Canada, I saw it at the old Varsity Theatre on West 10th in Vancouver in the University District. And I was unlucky in the choice of audience because there were three, shall we say, bohemian types who I suppose they were expecting something camp and they didn't get it. And they snickered throughout at every example of a Gothic cliche. By the end of the movie, I wanted to bash their heads in. But, you go to see a Gothic film and you get Gothic, and these fellows thought this was absolutely hilarious. On the old book club on Luke Ford's stream, I discussed Bram Stoker's Dracula and expressed my belief that it is an allegory. It is an allegory of sexual initiation. And this is the horror. The horror is that once initiated into lust, one feels an ineluctable desire, necessity to infect others. Keep in mind that, of course, that Dracula was written in 1897, so it is indeed a Victorian work. At that time, the strictures regarding sexual expression in media were beginning to fray. This was the time of the Yellow Book and the decadence, and you can see Bram Stoker's Dracula as kind of a warning of what is to come. Now, Kinski plays Nosferatu, and his wife Lucy is played by Isabel Adjani, and she was a very lucky choice because Isabel Adjani was at the time one of the most beautiful women in the world, and a woman of particular type of beauty, a rare kind of beauty, of very pale skin and dark hair. And in this movie, it is very, very long, and there are some scenes. There's one scene which seems to me to be a comment on or an homage to one of Edvard Munch's famous Madonna paintings, where the woman is seen to be a creature of malevolence, but of course Lucy Harkness is exactly the opposite, and she is typically wearing white, diaphanous gowns, which emphasize her innocence. Bruno Ganz plays Lucy's husband, and well, I guess we know him, or we've all seen him, the parodies of Hitler, right, in Downfall. Well, he made this when he was a relatively young man. He does very good in it. He plays a noble character, at least in the beginning. In the second half of the movie, he has been driven insane by his adventures in Transylvania. The music is notable. It is by a German band called Popol Vuh, and it is the style of music that, well, some people call it krautrock, others kosmische Musik, a very cosmic band. And a lot of it is, you see this in other German kosmische bands, like, say, Cluster, that you have kind of a strumming effect, very, very pastoral, with synthesizers playing over it. There is also, however, Richard Wagner, Das Rheingold, from the beginning of Das Rheingold, when Dracula's castle is first espied, and you can't go wrong with the beginning of Das Rheingold. So this movie is set in Wismar, Germany. The curious thing about Murnau and Herzog was that, of course, Gothic was German, and the Gothic craze in England was associated with Queen Victoria's husband, Prince Albert, who introduced, the love of pine trees, the modern Christmas, lots of other things, German decoration, etc. But you see, with Bram Stoker's Dracula, he has made this English, but then Murnau and Herzog have taken it back to Germany, where it began. And this is I have to say, this is an intensely beautiful film. And it is filmed in the Netherlands, primarily in Delft. And Delft, which is on a canal, is, it's one of the most beautiful places on Earth. There were problems with shooting in Delft because of the rats, the plague rats, that Herzog's idea was to unloose 11,000 rats onto the streets of Delft. And the townsfolk did not much like that. So the rat parts of the film were done in Schiedam. But most of this movie, almost all of it, is done on location. And it's a very strong argument for filming on location. As I say, Delft and Schiedam are beautiful. The kind of tawdry, the menacing castle of Count Dracula is beautiful in its own way. The scenes of travel travel by water and travel over land. Again, the cinematography, I must praise. This is by Jörg Schmidt-Reitwein. Everything in this film comes together, and you have a story which everyone knows, and I guess it was Herzog's attempt to show how much new he could bring to it, simply based on the visuals, the looks of the actors and actresses, and of the glories or horrors of nature and man's invention. So we have this situation where, of course, as you all know, Harker goes to Transylvania because Count Dracula wants to buy property. And one has to watch this film without prejudice. Again, a warning there. Because keep in mind that this is a story which is not set in the present day, and the way that the Count acts towards this real estate agent, one might expect him to run away in terror or to say some nasty things, but he is, I suppose back then, before this became a cliche, the idea that someone would want to drink your blood, well, it's unthinkable. It's unthinkable, isn't it? And so he is cast in his web, in the Count's web. Kinski's appearance is extraordinary in this film. That he looks similar to, but different from Max Schreck in Murnau's film. Schreck was simply hideous, terrifying. But what we get with Kinski is a really great performance, because it's not just the makeup and his facial expressions, but it's his voice and what he has to say, that he is an entirely tortured person. He's tortured because he has lived for centuries, and it is as if he cannot die. And he cannot love either, because he must kill or make that which he loves into something hideous, just like him. And so there's a kind of ambiguity about Kinski's Dracula that we don't really see very often. But make no mistake, he remains a terrifying figure. And the opposition of this terrifying figure to the beauty and innocence of the stunning Isabelle Adjani is exceedingly powerful. I love this movie. I mean, it takes some liberties with the text, particularly at the end, and I won't spoil it for you. But this is one of the most beautiful movies that I have ever seen. And I have to say, I remain exceedingly impressed that Werner Herzog took something so hackneyed as the Dracula story, and not only made it his own, but added something significant to the canon. And those are my thoughts on Werner Herzog's Nosferatu, Phantom der Nacht. Stoker was actually Irish. Yes, of course he was Irish. Absolutely right. Halper mentions Andy Warhol's Dracula, starring Udo Kier. It's Andy Warhol just put his name to it. I have seen both the Frankenstein and the Dracula that are called Andy Warhol's. Paul Morrissey, who is an under-recognized genius, was responsible for those films. They are absolutely disgusting, but absolutely hilarious. I mean, you have been warned. Don't blame me if you watch, the Dracula or the Frankenstein, because you have been warned. They are disgusting. People are generally knocked for a loop when they discover that Paul Morrissey, who is so tightly associated with Andy Warhol, is an extremely right-wing Irish Catholic. I guess the sense of the idea of detachment in art is unknown to people now. Morrissey made all of these films with transvestites and hustlers, and oh, you must love these people, what they're doing. No, not a question of whether I love them or not. I'm just depicting them. Okay. Lessons from the Darkness on the first Iraq War, 1990 is trippy, says William Hicks. The sequence where roughnecks cap one of the Orwells in slow motion to a Viennese classical piece is trippy. Sounds intriguing. Jogokin666 says, imagine Klaus Nomi replaces Klaus Kinski in all his roles. I don't think Klaus Nomi, I saw a couple of videos. I saw him on Saturday Night Live. He was all makeup, wasn't he? Treadwell was a failed actor in his show, says Hauper. Apparently, the story goes is that he was up for the Woody role in Cheers. And I'm thinking, like, did he really butch it up in the audition? Because Treadwell, he's effectively narrating this film. And it's just his voice is so whiny and effeminate. I just don't know how you could, make it in Hollywood with a voice like that. Let's see. Hopper says Aguirre is understandably crude in terms of photography, given the logistics. So the polish of Nosferatu took me by surprise. Jay Smith says in Spain everything is dubbed to. On the other hand, in Portugal everything is subtitled. 4 minutes to the debate. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to be back tomorrow, Friday. The book club, Mine Were of Trouble, Peter Kemp memoir. Spanish Civil War from the nationalist side. If you like the show or any part of it, I'd appreciate it if you would click on the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already done so. If you'd like to contribute to this live stream, greatly appreciated, especially at this time. My PayPal account is kevin_grace@hotmail.com. Once again, kevin_grace@hotmail.com. If you're Canadian, you can make a donation directly via Interac at kevingrace@shaw.ca. And I will leave you with this. In these days of social atomization, civilizational collapse, I do dearly wish that you, my dear viewers and listeners, manage to form some kind of genuine human connection in order to ease the burden. Good night.